Hello, everybody. This is Dan with the Wealth Instinct. I wanted to share with you my article on you don't need to struggle to be creative, just be yourself. Before I get started, if you could do me a favor and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications. So I have been sort of, I don't know, obsessed with creativity for a long time. And I think it's because I struggled for so long to be creative. I My first career was as a aerospace engineer. And I remember having a conversation with my brother, who was an artist, and just thinking, well, maybe my brain just works differently. Maybe I just have a different, you know, I really have noticed patterns and structure, and maybe that's what makes me want to be an engineer. Um, but then also kind of just wanting to be more creative and not really understanding why I wasn't. And over time, the what I realized in the conclusion that I came to was that I was trying to be something that I wasn't. Um, and I think growing up, I was always trying to fit the mold of what I thought I was supposed to be. So I would suppress my original thoughts and I would just regurgitate the thoughts of that I thought I was supposed to have and do the career I thought I was supposed to have and live the life I thought I was supposed to have. And so instead of expressing myself and being myself, I was constantly trying to be something else, something that I thought my parents wanted me to be or society wanted me to be. And I think doing that growing up and over time was what really suppressed my creativity. It wasn't that I wasn't creative, is that I was suppressing it and holding it back. And fear is a big part of that, right? Like if you're too different from people in the group, there's this fear of rejection, right? Um, but then if you're too much alike them, then you don't feel like you have an individual identity. And so what often comes up in blocking creativity or anything in life is fear. It's fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of you know being different, fear of not being fear of being judged, fear of being wrong, fear of making mistakes, right? And like that's what really holds you back, right? Like like if you think about like being creative, you have to make mistakes. Like that's just a part of the process, right? Like if you let's say you're trying to invent a new product, your first several attempts are going to be terrible. Right? Like you're not going to invent like the post-it note on your first try or right like the iPod, right? You're going to make something that you think is going to be amazing and it's going to be not quite what you thought and you're going to have to tweak it and fix it and if you're trying to write or create art or music, your first attempts probably aren't going to match up to what you think they should be. And that's just part of the creative process and part of the learning process. And that's so when you have a fear of failure and you have a fear of being wrong or fear of being judged, like if you're afraid of being judged, like how is that going to affect your ability to create something unique, right? Like that can completely block it, right? Because look at people who are artists and how people talk about them and how people judge them. I don't like her. I don't like him. They're really not, they're overrated. They're not that talented, and we hear these messages and we share these messages. And then when you have a thought of being creative, somewhere in your brain might be saying, well, what if people talk about me that way? What if people say that I don't have talent? What if people don't like my work? And this fear can really block you and suppress you. And it's a difficult thing. Like, and it's a real thing. It's easy to say, oh, don't worry about what people think. But the truth is we're programmed to worry about what people think because we are communal creatures and we have to function within a community and with a society. And so it's about you've got to find that balance of having your own voice and your own confidence and your own unique expression, but also being part of the group and being respectful of other people and their voice and their their perspective and their individuality. So what I think is important is to express yourself, right? Like you are a unique individual, and even if what's interesting is like I think about siblings a lot because I have a lot of siblings, and you could grow up with the same, very similar genetics, the same parents. You can grow up in the same house. You can grow up, so you got the same socioeconomics. You got very similar education, but just being 2 years older or younger, or 4 years older or younger than someone else gives you very different context as you're growing up, right? Like if you experience something emotionally charged, like it could be positive or negative, right? Like if you experience something as a 6-year-old, the effect it has on you throughout your life is going to be very different than if you experience that same event when you were 4 or when you were 8 or 12 or 2, right? Like that's why siblings can be so different. I talk to my siblings about things that happened when we were growing up, and they'll talk about things that bothered them so much and were so upsetting. And I'm like, I was younger and I was like, what are you talking about? Like I wasn't aware of a more adult perspective. I had a kid's perspective. And so it didn't affect me the same way. And and so you think about that, people who grew up in almost the exact same context, but because as we grow and things affect us differently at different ages, there can be a huge difference, right? So then imagine someone who grew up in a different socioeconomic reality or a different religion or a different part of the country or part of the world with different economic conditions and different religious beliefs. Like you really see how each person has a very unique perspective on life, right? We're all looking at a lot of the same things, but from a different angle, and the lighting is different, and the colors show up differently, and the temperature is a little different of everything. And so just by the fact that you're a unique individual, you have to recreate everything you experience in your mind, and then when you express it, it becomes a unique creation of you, right? So it's almost impossible not to be creative as long as you as long as you express yourself and your unique perspective. And so I think that's what held me back for a while, is that I wasn't doing that. I was suppressing that. And and I think that's something that's important to do. And you need to feel like you can do that, right? Like sometimes we feel like we don't have permission to speak freely, like people don't care about our opinion, don't want our opinion. And I think one of the problems is that thoughts are incomplete. You have a thought, and your brain kind of processes it in a way and then kind of solidifies it, and then makes it concrete, and it becomes a belief system. And it's not complete, right? Like in order to really complete a thought, you have to express it, you have to write it down, you have to say it out loud, because when you say it out loud, you get to hear it through other people's perspective and other people's ears, even if no one's in the room. Like when you say it out loud, you hear it differently. You think, wow, maybe that doesn't make sense, or there's times when you might say something that you really believe is true, and someone will look at you and say, what are you talking about? That is crazy, right? And they have a different perspective, and from their perspective, what you're saying doesn't make any sense, right? So part of processing your thoughts and part of processing your perspective is sharing it. And if you are afraid to express yourself for whatever reason, maybe you've been punished for it by a boss or a parent or a teacher, that's going to hold back your creativity, and it's going to hold back your personal growth. And you might even unknowingly be suppressing other people's creative expression, right? Like someone might share an idea and you shut them down. I do this with certain people, and later I'm like, oh, I need to be more patient with them. I need to give them, the space to speak their mind too. And it's something that we all need to do for our own development and for our communal development. And 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 sometimes, right, it's just something that you wouldn't do naturally. So you need to find like an outlet, a place where you can have permission, or have it's almost like you need an assignment where someone says, hey, why don't you write down your beliefs and see if you really believe that, if it really makes sense. Why don't you, I think one of the best ones I've done is just visualizing your future. Like, what do you want your life to be like? Do you want to live in a house, an apartment? Do you want to live in a condo? Do you want to live in the mountains? Do you want to live at the beach? Um, do you want to have different homes? What kind of work do you want to do? And some people say, well, I don't want to have to work. Well, okay, fine, but you need to do something to keep yourself busy because you'll get bored. So, maybe you have a cause that you want to, what problem in the world do you want to solve? Who do you want to be a hero to? You know, who do you, what do you want your life to be about? And just thinking about that and writing about that and creating a vision gives you something to move towards. And sometimes like, a book or a personal development course can be really helpful in doing that, just to kind of give you permission and give you assignments and give you an outlet to do that. And there's so many out there. One that I've been involved with a lot recently is Jeff Lerner's program through Entra, and there's just so much in there about, they talk a lot about how to start an online business and how to make money, but they also talk a lot about just how to relate to other people better, how to take care of yourself better, how to have a better daily routine, how to have just more enjoyment out of life and how to live more fully. And just going through some of those assignments and just questioning some things and checking in with yourself is really important. And I think so often we finish our education, our formal education, and we think, okay, we're done. And it's like, no, you're not done. You're not done. You just started. And it's interesting because I feel like I've grown and changed my whole beliefs so much in the last 10 years, and I see other people who haven't, and it's just kind of so interesting to me to see how I've changed so much, and their thoughts and beliefs don't seem to have changed. Like they're saying the exact same things that they said 10 years ago that I used to believe, and now I look at those from a different perspective, and I see how some of the nuance has changed because I'm getting light shined on that from a different angle, and different perspectives show up and different colors show up, and you start to see the world differently as you connect with more people and appreciate their unique perspective. So your assignment is to express yourself and find your creative voice, find your unique perspective, and check out this link. It's pretty cool. I'm super into the Entra Nation and just a group of people who are trying to improve their lives. So thank you so much for checking out my article and listening. And if you could subscribe, let me know your thoughts, and I'd love to hear from you. We'll talk soon.